Hi, everybody. It is 6:01 p.m. on May 21st, 2020. Regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. We are meeting virtually. I will take a quick look at the agenda and read what we will be discussing this evening. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18. And the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. We will have an audio recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. The only official business that the Planning Board has this evening is a continuation of the discussion on case DRA 2020-0162 of 74 Middlesex Avenue. The applicant made a presentation earlier. The Planning Board testimony and had some internal discussion and questions for the applicant. Once we finish with that, the Planning Board will continue with some other business as well, which is the election of the vice chair and the clerk, and also a presentation on SummerVision. I do have a question. Does staff have a particular preference as to whether the SummerVision presentation should go forward before the official business or not?
Mr. Chair, Rebecca Cooper speaking. Melissa Woods is here. I am led to understand that the presentation will be contained and somewhat short in time, and it might be helpful for the new members especially to get that input now, but I leave it up to you.
Yeah, at the discretion of the chair, we'll be taking that agenda item out of order and have a presentation by Melissa Woods on the SummerVision 2040 updates.
Hello, everybody. It's Melissa Woods. It's nice to virtually meet the new members of the Planning Board. I hope to meet you in person soon. And so at least I'm putting some names to faces, but unfortunately you can't do the same for me. So I'm sorry about that. But thanks for allowing me to present a SummerVision update to you all this evening. Amelia and Michael are experts already, so I'm sorry this will be slightly redundant for you. But in your inboxes, you should have received an update from Rebecca and me. We've been working on SummerVision since the fall of 2018, first internally, and then going public in early 2019. We worked with community members and reconstituted what was in SummerVision 2030's process. The SummerVision steering committee, we had a 60-person SummerVision committee. We called them the SVC for short. So over the last year, we've been working with the community on updating our city's comprehensive plan, and that culminated in a draft being released in January of this year. So in your inboxes, you have links to summervision2040.com, which has a link to the full document in draft form, but also summarizes our processes thus far. And we, the Planning Board, opened a comment period which closed on, I believe it was April 17th. And so that email includes all the comments that we've received regarding SummerVision. I also included the video of us presenting to the City Council on the same night in January. We presented to the Planning Board and the City Council the same presentation. So I included the video of the presentation to the City Council just because that, since it was recorded and videotaped, it's a better presentation to digest remotely, and then the audio from the public testimony from that evening. So at this time, we were, you know, like the rest of the world, a little caught off guard in this adoption process by the working remote order. So we have worked to figure out some updates we need to make in the plan, addressing comments. A lot of the comments focused around strengthening language to be inclusive of elderly people, making sure that we are right on incorporating equity throughout the document, and just really strengthening some of the language that we already had. I think our comments were well-rounded, and there's some small edits we can make to be more clear. And we are working in Summer Vision 2030's process. The plan was endorsed by the City Council and adopted by the Planning Board. You are the regulating body for comprehensive and neighborhood plans, but it is nice to have a council endorsement as well, because this comprehensive plan really sets a guiding framework for our city and affects the council, the planning board, future zoning efforts, future neighborhood planning efforts. So we are working on a schedule right now to remotely get this in front of the City Council and your board again for that endorsement and adoption. So I'm here tonight because we have new members, and I'm sure you're drinking from a fire hose, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have either this evening or schedule time to come back later, or schedule time one-on-one if you really want to dig in and get into the details. But know that me and the rest of my team working on Summer Vision, Lauren Drago, Victor Nascimento, and Courtney Desir, are here and happy to bring you up to speed on the process thus far.
I can speak for myself and know where we came from. So I would love if any of our new members or Amelia too, who I know has been involved in the process. If you have any questions for staff before we consider whether we want to take a vote to adopt it this evening, or if we want to think on it more and take it up again in a future planning board.
Michael, if I may, we would prefer to not have adoption this evening, just because I have not promoted it through the appropriate channels to make sure everyone is in the know if you were to act.
So totally fine. I would have preferred more time so that people could get on board, but I also know that this has been a long process, and I wasn't sure how immediately you would need us to get this done. So let's have some questions and some discussion, and we can take it up again in a future meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if I can ask staff to provide some clarity on the steps that have been going on or any next steps that are being considered. I'm obviously quite familiar with the process that we undertook to get to this point, but I do think there is some merit to the public feedback we've received more recently, and that some items might be appropriate to revisit in light of the pandemic and sort of anticipated short-term changes to infrastructure in the next couple of years. That I can imagine ways in which we might take a second look at the document, as some people have suggested, in light of the changed circumstances. And I'm curious how staff is feeling about that proposition, or what changes may already be underway to reflect that.
Yes, through the chair, I'd be happy to address that question. I think we still, despite what's going on in the world, we still have a very strong document put out in draft form. We want to add a section about this global pandemic and are looking to move forward for adoption and endorsement at this time, because in Somerville, we do not have a comprehensive plan that addresses equity and displacement at its forefront. And we think that is going to be incredibly important in our recovery from this pandemic. And it was important before it happened. It's even more important now. So we do want to add a section addressing our current events, but also talking about how important it is for us to care for our entire community. We also think that our topic-based chapters, although things have been reprioritized, and obviously, even Councilor Niedergang, I think it was, in the city council presentation brought up, how do we balance this fiscally? How do we balance our goals, our values, and the city budget? And although the city budget, shrinks and contracts, and, we have different needs depending on the year, I think our topic-based chapters still outline where we want to be in the future. We are open-minded. I know Rachel Borgatti has talked about revisiting the public space chapter. We are open-minded to that, but at this time, we feel like we can address it through edits without reconvening the SBC, but that's still, subject to change.
If I may follow up, what is the process that will be in place for amending the plan? Or you mentioned edits, but I'm not sure. Last time we went straight from Summer Vision 2030 to 2040 over the course of 10 years. Will this document be able to be amended through a process, or will the edits be done by staff internally?
Right now, we are going to be proposing changes and edits we would be bringing forward a document in front of the City Council and Planning Board and talking specifically about what we've changed since the draft version. It's good to update a comprehensive plan every 5 to 10 years. I think 5 years seems a little too recent. 10 years seems maybe a little too distant, but I think when the time is right, to update the plan. And as the administration and as the council and you as the planning board, as you feel that need, express that concern, because it is our guiding document. So we want it to be up to date with our, feelings about the city.
Thank you.
If I could add on quickly to, I think it was Amelia's first question. I definitely agree that there are a lot of changing circumstances that are going to require changes, and I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about that additional section. In that section, and even throughout the document relating to equity and diversity and displacement, I would just encourage as much quantification as possible. I think these are really easy concepts to adhere or to speak highly of and to say that we're committed to, but they can be squishy topics that are hard to make concrete. So I think this is a really great opportunity to make those concrete and to show that Somerville wants to walk the talk.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I had a question. I just, and maybe this is piggybacking on kind of what Amelia had asked, and in part because I'm new. So I understand there was a public comment period, and the document I got yesterday is 74 pages of public comments. So is it my understanding then is you all have been working to integrate changes in response to those, and at some point you're going to be coming forward to the council and the planning board with a revised document, but that hasn't been shared yet. Is that a correct characterization?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. We have distilled those comments and found sort of reoccurring themes in those to either propose changes or to talk with different SBC topic chapter groups about making changes. And we will be bringing that revised document forward, but it is not done yet.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got any questions? Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just I had the chance to review the public the comments, and it's very much accurate to say that there were certain themes, recurring themes, themes around senior citizens, around the environment, accessibility, diversity, inclusion. But one item I wanted to mention was with respect to the pandemic situation currently and the impact of small businesses, independent minority-owned businesses. That was the area that maybe had one or two comments from the public, but I just wanted to see if that's going to be part of your consideration, similar to what Sam had mentioned around any quantification. I just want to get a better sense of how you guys are thinking about specifically the minority independent small business owners and the consideration around that.
At this time, I don't see anything in my notes that address editing, but definitely that's something that we can circle back on and see how we can incorporate that in the document. I think small businesses are very impacted by this crisis, and I read an article yesterday about daycare owners being primarily women and minority owned, being heavily burdened by this crisis. So I think your comment is well received, and we'll look into that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any further questions for staff on the update to SummerVision, or where we will be going in the future when we take a look at this and consider adoption?
If I might add, I'm happy to have some offline conversations with staff on this point if it's useful, but I feel as though there might be a moment to revisit, separate from the public comment received, the prioritization of bike infrastructure. I think it received a strong amount of prioritization and sort of positive direction in the draft that we last reviewed. But I do think that's one particularly physical way in which our infrastructure needs might be reconsidered moving forward, and whether that's something that staff is already on top of or something that might merit a short conversation, I'd be happy to discuss.
Through the chair, absolutely. We did see sort of a strong thread about community paths, but I think that multimodal off-street transportation language needs to be strengthened. So we can look at, sort of our bike network and how that reads in the mobility section.
Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Melissa, for an update, and staff for answering the questions that the new members and our second longest tenured member have. Is there anything else that you have for us before we move on to our official business?
No, just want to say thank you, and please reach out if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to 74 Middlesex. We had previously opened this public hearing, so it does not need to be read into the record again. We had a pretty lengthy discussion with the applicant and with staff at the last regular meeting that we had, which I think was May 7th. We also took some public testimony, and I'd like to hear from the applicant on how they have addressed some of the questions, or any or all of the questions that were raised both by the city in its memorandum that was attached to the staff report, as well as to the questions and issues that were raised by members of this board and of the public.
Mr. Chair, it's Rebecca speaking. Hang on for just a second. We're going to get a presentation up and running and get everybody.
Sounds great.
All right, I think we're ready to go.
Good evening, everyone. Again, it's good to see all of you 2 weeks later. This is Ryan Sullivan from Edge. I'm joined again by my internal team, Jan Hein, Max, and Gwen, as well as many of our consultants. This evening, we will be continuing our presentation, and when in that continuation, it's really just answering the questions or what we believe to be the questions from the 2 weeks ago on 5/7. So today, to address those questions, you'll have myself, Ryan Sullivan, Development Director from Edge Technologies. You'll have Victor Viscaitis from Sasaki, Jason Volin from AECOM, and Hugh Han from VHB. So just to get right into it, these are the issues that we saw as open questions or items requiring clarification from our 5/7 meeting. I'm going to run through a list of these. It's the COVID response regarding technology, the work environment and air quality, indoor air quality in general, specifically in regards to MER filters, ground floor activation and green space, connectivity of the site to Somerville, outdoor space as it relates to lead approach, linkage fee detail, community benefit fund detail, inclusion of WMBE and LBE firms and workforce participation ambitions, urban forestry report feedback, and engineering report feedback. So we're going to start off with the COVID response. First and foremost, as discussed in our last presentation, we believe that our 4 pillars and the values we have as a company, addressed the COVID situation before it happened. The values that we include in sustainability and wellness and well-being, specifically air quality, all being managed through a innovative design and through technology, are all areas where you can address these concerns. So today, I really wanted to focus on the technology aspect of that, because technology is really the foundation and the founding principle behind everything. So our biggest ambition here is we want Edge Assembly Square to be the smartest building in the Boston market. We believe through our experience and through our smart package platform, we believe this is the true opportunity for the site. This is really made up of a few different parts. One, it's an integrated data platform, which we'll call the hardware. This is the IP backbone infrastructure and sensors throughout the building. It includes a seamless user interface, which we'll call the software, which is an interface that the building manager and individual tenants are able to go to and utilize to see how the building's performing and see how their space is performing, as well as their employees. And all of this is future proof. We make sure that there's new applications coming in the future, whether it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road, that those technologies that are going to be an evolution of what we have today are able to be applied to this building. And with that, I just wanted to pull a display dashboard from our Edge Olympic building. This is an example of this slide here is just showing you how we measure air quality, for example. So this measures CO2, temperature, relative humidity. There's other widgets that you can measure depending on what you want to measure in the space and what sensors we install in the space. So this is just one example of many different types of solutions. Other things that we see as it relates to the issue itself is that you utilize these display dashboards and this technology to help employees find workspaces. Therefore, if there is an area populated with 5 people and they're all spread 6 feet apart, no one else could fit over there to stick towards these COVID responses, it will initiate someone to go to a different section of that floor. That's one example. You can optimize the use of space in a different way. So if a tenant is seeing that certain groups tend to work together on a daily basis and others don't talk too often, they could cluster those groups that work together in order for them to have interaction and collaboration without them having to travel across the whole entire floor or to have to travel to a different floor in general. And along with this technology platform, you're able to also address maintenance and performance issues related to the MEP equipment, whether it's filtration for air quality, or whether it's just the performance and maintenance of a machine that's been working for the past 2 years and needs a tune-up before it becomes a problem. All of this is also tied to the BMS system, which just helps you measure the efficiency of the energy performance throughout the whole entire building. So we really see this technology platform as a very holistic approach that is able to touch all of these main issues, sustainability, wellness, and the tenant user-specific needs. Now to get over to air quality, I'm going to hand it over to Jason.
Thanks, Ryan. As well as being wanting to be the smartest building in the area, we also want it to be the healthiest building in the area, and that really, in many ways, begins and ends with the indoor air quality. So we quickly discovered when speaking about our project and our plan with WIG earlier this week, as well as a few other interactions that we've had, that our goals were directly aligned. So while we had developed a plan originally to provide for the tenant to get to the level of protection that WIG was promoting, after speaking with him, we decided to just make sure that all incoming air is filtered to a MERV 16 level, that's surgical suite level. That will be for a core and shell unprecedented, where MERV 13 is the standard. And I'll show a diagram shortly about how that gets deployed. So as often required in a laboratory setting, we're using 100% dedicated outdoor air. So even the air that's moving through is passed through once. And because it's a laboratory building, there's an aggressive air exchanges per hour. So air is moving through, that's being filtered fast, and it's only going through once. So combining that strategy with the high level of filtration, it significantly improves the air quality indoors. And the kind of final strategy is to make sure that we have a high performing building envelope and a building that has positive pressure. And all those things before add to the positive pressure of the building, which keeps the building from getting infiltration through leaky joints and openings. So all of those things work as a kind of combined suite to get you the air at the tenant level being the highest quality before it even gets to the next level of filtration. So Ryan, if you could go to the next slide. So how that gets played out, as you can see in the top of the building diagram, it's the intake air is about 100 plus meters away from the highway. You see the primary wind direction on the left. It goes down the highway corridor. So that's our main concern. So to having the intake on the top is step one, having a two-stage filter, one to take out major particles with the MERV 8. Then the DOS heat exchange happens, dedicated outdoor air system exchange, and then a MERV 16 below it means that all the incoming air before it gets to the tenants is at that surgical suite level. Then there'll be tenant fit out. And what we're accommodating for them is to either continue the MERV 16 air or go up to MERV 17 or higher. Often laboratories do this anyway, but having the MERV 17, and this is what we're doing at AECOM with our own spaces, is having the ability to go up to MERV 17 for COVID-19. So that level and building that in is really the kind of final piece where the air is already coming in at a high quality, and then it has the opportunity at the tenant level when they take over the fit out to go to the next level or all the way up as high as that you want to go.
Yeah, and Jason, I would just end that by saying I'd like to thank WIG for helping influence us in making sure that we're very clear to the marketplace that it is our complete intention to have the healthiest building in the marketplace. We want that to be clear to whoever is either researching our building, looking at our building from a tenant point of view, or from the public point of view, as we're just trying to set the example for all the buildings in the marketplace. And Victor?
Yeah, in addition to this, being an incredibly healthy building and a high-performing building, we do also want this to be a good neighbor. We touched on this in the last meeting, but I think we just wanted to emphasize the presence that this is going to have at the ground floor, at the street. Everything in the building footprint that you see in the light blue is meant to be transparent and either public or front-facing. So retail all along Middlesex Ave, along the front part of McGrath Highway access there, and then the lobby and potentially other cafe retail space fronting on the Kensington parcel, where we are talking about really redeveloping that public open space. So the goal here is to make sure that this building has a very strong public face, that there are no dead edges to any place where the public is moving, the public is walking, and really minimizing the back of house footprint as much as we possibly can on that ground floor. And to just build on that green space story a little bit, right? And if you go to the next slide, we talked about this a little last time as well, but we wanted to clarify our goal, consistent with that idea of making this, the healthiest building we possibly can, the highest performing building we possibly can, is to really introduce as much green space as we possibly can into the building. Up the building, as we get onto the tenant floors, that's through a combination of some outdoor terraces, of green balconies, of interior winter gardens and atrium spaces throughout. I think we'll be looking at opportunities on the roof, though the reality is we've probably got so much mechanical equipment through what Jason just talked about, as well as an effort to get a great photovoltaic installation up there, that most of that is going to be confined to the floors. But we also really want to emphasize what is happening in that public open space. Now, consistent with the air quality conversation we were just having, we recognize this site's location adjacent to the highway, right? And the challenges with potential air pollution from that space. We do want to redevelop this public open space, though, as something really vital and vibrant. We see this site and that space in particular as this real node and hub of public connectivity for vehicles, for pedestrians, for bikes, for buses, both through the Kensington connector underneath the highway, but also just moving back into the Assembly Square to the Orange Line T-stop along McGrath Highway, really focused on getting the bike share program in there, which you see in that sort of glowing blue bar along Middlesex Ave, as well as additional bike parking. But the nature of this public open space, because we do want to make something exciting, we do want to make something that feels vibrant and redeveloped as this great entry point to the area. But this is not a place to come and play a soccer game, right? This is not a place to come and spend 6 hours having a picnic. We see it as being beautiful. We see it as being landscaped, of giving a sense of health, but it is a transient outdoor space, right? You might have a cup of coffee and sit there for a half an hour while you're waiting to go to your office or while you're waiting for the bus. You're going to be passing through it, but it's not meant to be a long-term hangout space. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be beautiful. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be heavily landscaped, and it doesn't mean it shouldn't be an attractor, but we don't see it as being a landscape that is meant to encourage long-term habitation, because we know the nature of the site, but we do want it to be a wonderful place.
Thanks, Victor.
And I think just to build on that and give it back to Jason, I think we want to talk about how we see that outdoor space really supporting then the lead mission of the project.
Thanks, Victor. One of the great things is as much as we have these mechanical systems that are high performing, the site itself is something we are looking to operationalize as much as possible to participate in this, and that's really evidenced in the LEED scorecard. If you look at the sustainable sites and water efficiency on the left, for example, and I should be clear, when something's in the yellow, it's not like a traffic signal, right? That's not caution. What that is things we're looking to incorporate that at the stage of design. We have them in, but we're not exactly sure where we'll land. So those are our targets to kind of rope in. So already in sustainable sites, in open space, we have our credit. In the heat island reduction, of course, we have our credit. What we're really focused on now is rainwater management, to be able to kind of pull in that as possible. We have to see what the calculations are going to bear out. We're working together with Victor to see how many of those credits we can pull in. We're already at LEED Platinum, so now it's really a matter of how much higher can we get by being responsible a developer to these things that we think are really critical. And below it, water efficiency is the same thing. Our outdoor water reuse, we're getting all the points, and that we're getting the majority of the points in the indoor water use reduction. But as we develop, we're going to target those other 2 points and see if we can build on, because those are part of the ethos of the project as proposed. So this is where we stand as a snapshot very early on in the process. We believe that we're going to capture a lot more of those points as we go forward.
Yeah, I would also just add to that, Jason, that it's not easy to commit to this many points this early in the process usually. So it took I'd say a tremendous effort from our team, especially your team, to be able to identify and commit to these points early on, because we knew it was a priority for the city and also for us. So thank you for that. So to get back to some of the other items, inclusion. Inclusion is one of the 5 core values for this project. I want to make that very clear. We're going to explore all possible opportunities throughout the project procurement process. We can commit to tracking our ambitions and progress throughout the project, and we can commit to creating an inclusion program with our construction manager once that construction manager is hired. So right there, we just wanted to present these, what we can commit to today with where we are now, and just promise that it's going to be a core value throughout the whole entire development process. When it comes to linkage fee is quite prescriptive. So just I'll kind of bring you through that, how we got there. It's based on the gross square foot. So in our submission, we proposed 525,000 gross square feet, and per ordinance 2017-16 15.5, and then plus the latest updates, it is $10 per gross square foot on all gross square feet after the first 30,000 square feet. And this goes towards the Somerville Housing Trust. And then on top of that, it's another $2.58 per gross square foot towards the Somerville Municipal Job Creation and Retention Trust. And this is on every gross square foot after the first 15,000 square feet. This is the estimated fee here is about 6.275 million. But let's give it a little liberty to go up or down there, but it's 6.275 is our estimate there. And then when it comes to, separately to the Community Benefit Fund, that's also based on our gross square feet at 525,000 gross square feet. It's based on $5.90 per gross square foot, which does not include a CPI adjustment, which is to be determined. And this was included in the previously approved PUD PMP from a couple years ago. This estimated value is $3.1 million, which goes towards the public benefits and improvements. So as a total suite of packages, if you put together the linkage fee plus the community benefit fund plus the cost of permits, there's an estimated value of I'd say over $14.5 million going towards the city of Somerville in some way, shape, or form. And we look forward to being able to contribute that. I'm going to hand it over to Hugh to go over the public space.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, members of the board. I'm going to address comments that we received from the Public Space and Urban Forestry Division, as well as the Engineering Division. Generally, the comments from the Public Space and Urban Forestry, we agree, wholeheartedly with their sentiment and their goals. We have been working with them as we've been developing the master plan. I do want to point out that we have, in excess of 25% of the property is open space. We are committed to developing 25% of the area of the property as civic space. This is made up in part of some open space on the site, plus repurposing Kensington Avenue as it runs runs between us and the city-owned parcel. That would include, pedestrian connection, bicycle connection. It's the area that Victor described earlier, as the commitment to the civic space integration. We are committed to continuing to collaborate with Public Space and Urban Forestry team as we go through the site plan process. They had a comment about perhaps providing some kid play zones within this otherwise more transient sort of through block plaza. We could see that perhaps happening with some pocket parks as they've described. So we are looking forward to continuing that back and forth in that process that I think will develop a really good plan. One of their concerns was to make sure that we didn't create unsafe conditions by focusing the use of the civic space for one type of user over another, particularly fast commuting cyclists. So we are looking forward to looking for ways to make it safe and comfortable for all users. In addition, the team has made a commitment to make improvements to and continue to maintain open space landscape improvements on the city-owned public space that's south of Kensington Avenue. The Kensington Park, I think, is what it's referred to sometimes. So that is the suite of things that we're looking forward to continuing to work with staff and Public Space and Urban Forestry Division as we go through the site plan approval. One last point that they made was looking to adopt the maintenance for that small triangle, which is at the corner of Kensington east-west and Kensington north-south. That is an area of the existing right-of-way that's critical, or it's integral to the site access to the parking that's at the back of our neighbor's property, the self-storage building. So to the extent that we can include that into the civic space, but still let it be primarily access for that adjacent property, we'll integrate those multiple uses as we go forward with the design of the civic space and the adjacent municipally owned open space. Ryan, if you could move to the next slide. The other report that we received, around the same time as our previous hearing was the engineering division report. They had 5 major comments. They did not want to discontinue Kensington Avenue, or they recommended they're not discontinuing it as a right-of-way. I think it can continue to exist as a public right-of-way, providing underground space for underground utilities, pedestrian connections, cyclists, emergency access. We are looking for integrating a portion of the civic space paving to be able to carry fire trucks, recognizing that they've been able to circulate around this block in the past, and we want to be able to continue that accessibility for emergency vehicles. We are proposing that the Kensington Avenue that runs east-west from I-93 out to Middlesex Avenue be converted or repurposed as the civic space through an easement with the city or some real estate vehicle. Engineering division suggested an easement, and the proponent is amenable to an easement as a vehicle to make that happen. The engineering division report mentioned resiliency. We have based the resiliency design for the building based on both sea level rise and precipitation-based predictions for the year 2070, both of those for the 100-year flood events. That resiliency will be presented will be represented in the building with flood proofing at entrances off the first floor, being able to set up flood gates or guards at primary entrances, in particular the access to the garage and the front and primary entrances, as well as the retail. It would be recognizing certain materials that might be needed to be used within the ground floor that could be quickly maintained, replaced, and refurbished in the event of a flood. We realize that we need to keep the ground floor of the building accessible to the adjacent streets. So that really sets our ground floor. Addressing predictions of flooding 50 years in the future has to come in the form of being able to prevent those flood waters from entering the building. Those are items that we are already beginning to look at as we're advancing the building, primarily with Sasaki as the architect and AECOM as the MEP. Most important, though, is the critical building components that are susceptible to flooding, i.e. the building electrical. That is already planned to be raised up a foot above those predicted 2070 100-year flood elevations. The stormwater retention on site, when we submitted the master plan, we were looking at retaining and recharging to the groundwater 0.8 inches of runoff from the site. That was consistent with the Somerville MS4 permit requirements, and it was the place we started. We've since had, since filing, we've had conversations with the engineering division, and we'll be making accommodations in that stormwater runoff and infiltration around the site to capture, hold, retain, and then infiltrate enough runoff volume such that the runoff from the site under the 10-year storm is equal to or less than the 2-year storm. And this is a way of reducing the volume and peak runoff rates that leave the site and are connected to the municipal storm drain. The engineering division also mentioned I&I sewer mitigation. It's noted, the proponent does understand that there is an II mitigation fee based on a 4-to-1 removal program. There's a fee established, and that fee will be a fee rate that's established per gallon per day of new wastewater. And that fee will be paid at the appropriate time as we move closer to building permit and building occupancy. There will be dewatering needed during construction, just to establish a dry place to work. But the engineering division report indicated that permanent dewatering of the project site won't be allowed. And that's so noted, and it will be a design detail as we work with the structural engineers moving forward through site plan approval and our building permit design and applications. So, we're in alignment. We feel that the project is in alignment with the comments that were made both by public space and urban forestry and the engineering divisions. Thank you.
Thanks, you. And these were our responses from what we believe to be the questions or comments that were still open. So please let us, that's the end of our presentation. Let us know if there was anything else that you would like us to address today, and we'll be happy to address it.
Sure. Before I continue on with our discussion, I just want to make a note that Matt McLaughlin, who's the Ward 1 Alderman, is in attendance and has indicated that he'd like to speak on this. I understand that he has a legislative matters committee meeting that he is not attending right now, so he can speak on this. So I'd like to invite him to address the planning board at this point, if you'd like.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. Councilor McLaughlin is unmuted and able to speak.
I am here. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. Normally, I would like to wait till the end of public hearing, so I hear from the public, but I am in the middle of a legislative matters meeting. So I just wanted to weigh in on this project, which I think is a great project, has a lot of upside to it. There was a previous project that was proposed here that is supported that wasn't as well supported, and I feel like this is an even better project, which is really going to enhance the commercial base we're looking for. I like that we have responsible, environmentally responsible partners here. I think overall, I have a lot of positive things to say about it, and I'm sure people who comment will speak on the pros and cons of it. I think this project is going to make it difficult for other developments because they're really offering a lot of things that people have told us can't be done, such as the LEED Platinum and other aspects to this project that I like. I hosted several meetings on this. One was a public meeting before COVID-19 happened, and then we had 2 remote meetings as well. So we did our due diligence on trying to do the best we can in the current climate to get public comment on this and to get input. The only negative I could say that I would definitely like to be addressed in whatever way possible is there are 2 businesses that are on the site right now. One is a Dunkin' Donuts, which I believe is going to be in the new building in the future, but the other is a Haitian restaurant that I don't believe is going to be there. And I've asked the developers on a few occasions to provide some sort of assistance for them, whether it be moving expenses or something to help them to make it less painful, especially now, to have to move if they have to move. And I haven't gotten any commitment from the developers on that, and I would really like a commitment on that. This is a socially responsible company. I think it's socially responsible to look out for an immigrant-owned business, especially when you're a billion-dollar organization and could easily do this. So other than that one thing that I would really like addressed, I do think this is a tremendously positive project that I look forward to seeing happen. And I'll stick around for a few minutes if people had questions, but then yes, I do have to bounce back into legislative matters.
Thank you very much, Councilor McLaughlin. I'd like the applicant to address the matter that
Yes.
raised, which is the commitment to the existing restaurant that will likely face some unfortunate circumstances if they're required to be relocated, if they can find a place to relocate. We don't usually do this, but these are kind of different times, and it would be
Yes, we can address that.
a positive move if you could commit to doing something like that.
Well, one, yes, Dunkin' Donuts will be a tenant back in the building once we are done with construction, so that they will be a tenant. And two, the Haitian restaurant, yes, we commit to helping them relocate, and things related to that, such as moving expenses. Of course, that's got to be. We'll need to talk with them and understand those, but we are committed to those, helping them out with those things. So we look forward to those future conversations with the restaurant owner.
Great. Thank you very much. I also want to give Councilor McLaughlin a lot of credit because it was in the previous iteration of this project where he really pushed along with the neighborhood to get that Kensington underpass space utilized and maximized and brought in as a part of the community benefits for the previous development. And I'm really glad to see that it's moved forward with yours as well. So at this time, I'd like to open up this to members of the planning board to ask additional questions of staff. If staff has anything additional that they'd like to raise with the board. I know this is an application for a master plan, which means you guys will be before us again for the actual special permit. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, this is Sarah Lewis. Yes, they will have to come back through for the site plan approval. The one thing I would like to point out is that we are still looking at conditions for recommendation on this master plan special permit, and we hope to have an updated staff report to you with conditions by the next meeting.
Great. Thank you for the clarification, Sarah. The reason I was asking that is to inform the board and the public that this is not the last time that we will see this applicant, with the presumption that we do move forward at some point in the future once conditions are drafted by staff for our review, and we vote to approve this master plan. The applicant will be back before us again for a site plan approval, which could generate its own list of conditions for the project itself. Yes.
This might be a question for staff. It's about the special master plan. Master plan special permit process. Among the conditions, it requires infrastructure mitigation, transportation mitigation, and community impact mitigation. Could staff elaborate on what that has entailed in the past, or what the intent of those provisions are?
So for example, through the chair, one of the transportation mitigations might be that some of the community benefits that were outlined in the presentation, some of those fees might be used for the project that is currently underway to improve the Kensington underpass, connector, sorry, it's now called the connector. Some of the, we have to make sure that there is a rational nexus between anything that's conditioned and the actual project itself. So the easy way to think about it is if it is, this project cannot create detriment to its surroundings. And so if there's something that sort of needs to be improved, those are often conditions that are applied to the immediate surroundings. There are certain things, keep in mind, you know, sort of as the chair had mentioned, this is a master plan special permit. So it's sort of a bigger picture urban design viewpoint than anything specific to the building at this point in time. So a lot of it tends to be more about the urban design, the park improvements that they're suggesting, the streetscape improvements of Middlesex Avenue, understanding that they're likely to, for example, build to mobility and engineering standards what the new sidewalk section will look like. And things like that are usually conditioned as part of the project.
And is there, specifically with the, that's very helpful, thank you. Specifically to the community impact mitigation, that seems like it could be anything and everything. Is there a specific way that the planning department thinks about how to address that particular criteria?
Very often it's a, you know, sort of like the open space as part of the community benefit. So the fact that they're going to be improving an existing city-owned civic space is most definitely, you know, sort of the community impact improvement. I mentioned the connector. Yeah, I think in this project, it's mostly going to be sort of the open space and the connector pieces, probably.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and Sarah, that's because, as I remember from previous discussions, not just on this project, but on previous applications on different sites, that things like these types of community benefits have to be tied to the land and use, but also can be linked to things like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and pre-existing funds that can be recipients of community benefits. Is that right?
Exactly. Sort of like the linkages that were outlined that are required by the ordinance are those we used to actually have the linkages as part of the conditions. This is a little bit of history, but now they are actually in the zoning ordinance. We don't have to include those things as conditions specifically anymore. What we can do is make recommendations as to how those may be directed. So for example, because there is that civic open space that is immediately adjacent that is being proposed to be upgraded, then that can be, we can recommend sort of some of those where those fundings actually go, but those will be negotiated separately under the ordinance.
Thank you. Are there any other questions by members of the board at this time, of staff or of the applicant? Yeah, Amelia. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute and then my mouse battery died. I had one question for staff and I think two questions for the applicant. For staff, could someone remind us how the stormwater runoff approach that's discussed by the applicant compares to the regulation? I appreciate the effort to have that the 10-year storm be brought down to a 2-year storm level, and I'm afraid I can't recall what the baseline requirement is.
Oh, that's a very good question.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Sorry, through the chair, I will actually have to look that one up and sort of potentially confer with engineering and then be able to give you a better answer next time.
Thank you. And then my other question was just briefly, it was mentioned the sort of unclaimed triangle that might be brought into the project. I couldn't quite read the numbers on the screen. How large an area is that? That's either the applicant or staff. I'm sorry, I just couldn't read the data.
Hi, if we may, I believe Hugh can address the first question that was asked about the storm runoff. If we're able to go back to that question.
Certainly.
Hi, did I get unmuted?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. The baseline that we've been prescribed by engineering division is to reduce from the 10 to the 2. That is a standard that has been explained to me from engineering division for projects that need to connect because of the density that need to connect to the municipal storm drainage system. So the reducing the 10-year flow to the 10-year flow is the baseline that has been presented by the engineering division.
Thank you.
And then your next question was about the area of the triangle.
I was just curious because it wasn't legible in the presentation.
I don't know that small triangle that is being left that I discussed about being access to the neighbor. It looks like it's about 40 feet on a side, so that's roughly 300 square feet being a triangle.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Do any other members of the planning board have any questions of the applicant or staff? Go for it, Rob.
Thank you. I wanted to first just thank the applicant for reaching out to Mr. Zamor. I know he has been very engaged in this particular site for several years, as he's been engaged in many of the sites up in and around Assembly. I just wanted to thank you for that. I think based on this presentation and kind of the facts that you've laid out, I agree with the characterization that I think you will be setting the bar across the metropolitan area in terms of the quality of the building and its environmental sustainability and ability to weather our future together. And you may very well be the folks over in South Boston maybe knocking on your door when the floodwaters are coming into their front door. One question I had, and I don't know if this is for staff or the applicant, so I'll defer to the chair on who best to direct this to. The community benefit fund that was referenced, is that that's not something that's spelled out in ordinance, that's something that the applicant has agreed to on the side, I believe. And I guess my question is, where do those proceeds go, and who is the party that's responsible for determining where dollars from that are directed? It sounds like they've already been programmed. I just want to understand what that is and where it goes.
Through the chair, this is Sarah Lewis. As as I understand it, they have not been all programmed necessarily, but those are usually spearheaded by the Economic Development Department. And I think there are, just like the Housing Trust Fund, sort of there is a separate community benefits fund. I do not know the details necessarily of how those funds are used, but that is something that I can talk to Tom Galagani about and get back to you next meeting.
Okay, yeah, that would be helpful. I know it's not necessarily under the purview of this board. It would be helpful to know that the community is ongoing engagement and conversation around the dollars, where they go and for what purposes. That's all I had. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, John. Do you have anything that you'd like to ask or add? Don't have to.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, I'm really struck by the thoroughness of the presentation, and I certainly recognize that there's been significant effort made here with respect to the commitments both from the health and as well as a consideration around the community. I just wanted to understand, and perhaps I've asked this question previously, and I wanted to see if this pandemic, this COVID pandemic, if it continues to progress, is your organization making any additional changes outside of what has been already presented on environmental consideration or anything else that you may want to add regarding this project? Because I'm just curious to see if there's any additional plans, contingencies, or anything else that you may want to consider or present at this time.
I think your overall. Oh, sorry, I think there's an echo there. There's the overall approach, the performance-based approach, and we try to address these, high-level values, and you can try to create these key performance indicators, and we're trying to strive for things. Just use the air quality, for example. We identified the solution for that. Now, I think over the next few months, there will be more solutions that become quite evident as the right solution. I'll throw out some examples just of things that we're researching, not making a commitment to them now, but we think they're interesting. For example, there's like UV light in elevators. So there's UV light in the elevator when no one's occupying the space, and it actually kills the microbes in the space. So stuff like that. We do look at those. We do research those. We see which ones make sense and without. And that's something that's easy applicable for the building management team coming on. But those are things that we're always in discussion about, and we always enjoy researching. We have a product team, for example, in Amsterdam that's always researching new solutions to address these types of issues that you're bringing up.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have a few things that I'd like to say on this project. But first, I have noticed that at least one member of the attendees has had a hand raised for quite a while. It's Wayne Zamor, and it's been the practice of the planning board to reopen oral testimony when additional information has been presented by the applicant or by staff on a project. And because the applicant has come to us with additional information that may better inform members of the public, it is the chair's intention to reopen oral testimony tonight for those who would like to provide testimony on what they've seen in our May 7th meeting and also what has been presented here tonight. So if you would like to provide testimony, there is a little raise hand button on your attendee chart here. I see one, and I will call on you in order of whose hand was raised first. I also see that this platform has a little exclamation mark that says that people are not attentive. I think that's a bad way of putting it. I'm really glad I don't have to be in school with this. So if you want to speak and provide testimony, please do the little raised hand thing, and I will call on you, and we'll give you the opportunity to speak. So I'm going to give folks about a couple of seconds to figure out how to do it. I see 2 already. I'm going to ask you to limit your testimony to 2 minutes, but I won't hold you to it too deeply. So the first person whose hand I saw raised was Wig Zamo, who I'm glad will be providing testimony tonight because I've been looking forward to hearing from you, Wig. So please, I'm going to open up that portion of the public hearing and call on Wig Zamo to provide testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Rebecca speaking. I just want to remind everybody in the audience that this presentation is being recorded, as will be all of the public comments. And I would like to remind the speakers to please repeat your name and your home address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, hi, this is Wig. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. I am, of course, delighted at the decision to go to MERV 16 for the building. It's exactly the right thing to do for office and lab this close to the highways, but certainly also for residential. I appreciate that this is based on real science and real research. We're fortunate to have the universities here coordinate with us and cooperate on some of the best research in the world on near highway health effects of ultrafine particles. For me, that's the whole game with this project. I'll make a couple other comments, but it is enormously helpful. And there's a huge difference between MERV 16 in this location and MERV 13. It's the right choice. This will get 90 to 95% of the particles that MERV 13 misses, including especially the size range of viruses, including COVID-19 size range. For having met with them and for their decision to go ahead with this, I'm really grateful. It's a terrific precedent. I want to say also that folks may not know it, but there's been a large advance in cell biology and innate immunology the last 20 years. And the part of the innate immune system that drives the pace of chronic disease also reflects particulate matter, and it's unique. It's not necessarily pathogen driven. It's the only thing that recognizes molecular patterns that are not from pathogens, and that includes air pollution. And that's called the NLRP3 inflammasome. You don't have to remember it, but it is a major focus of pharma and biotechs worldwide right now because of its importance. It is not well known within the environmental health world, but it happens to be the very same part of the innate immune system that causes COVID-19 cytokine storm that pushes people who unfortunately succumb to it over the edge. And it is that part of the innate immune system that unites chronic disease drivers, particulate matter drivers, including nanoparticles, not just ultrafines from transportation, and COVID-19 are all integrated. And the assault from each of those is integrated into a single assault that causes acceleration of each of them when they're combined. So that's very important. With regard to almost every other feature, I'm very interested, but honestly, the sensibility of the committee and of the community is excellent, and I don't think your decisions or the community's decisions will unnecessarily be that much improved by myself. I just wanted to add 2 other long-term details that are more for the consideration of the committee longer term and not to be put on this project specifically. The first one I want to mention is...
Wait. Just you're well over the 2?
Yep.
I just wanted to let you know. So you.
Okay, this will be super quick. The first one is that the full build out of Assembly Square will require a connection from McGrath and O'Brien Highway, which will go close to this building. It's not something that's got to be done immediately, but you cannot build out all of Assembly without that connection. The second one I want to mention has to do with the Mystic River and the Mystic River Watershed Association. The storm we had last week, not so much here, but just inland of us, caused enormous overflows into the Mystic River. And so there's a lot of sewage in the river on the weekend. COVID-19 is highly concentrated in that sewage. And it's not as serious as when it's airborne, except for the people who work at the treatment plant, probably at Deer Isle. I hope they know that. But longer term, it would be nice to, not on this project, but just for the board, to figure out some way to bring the Mystic River Watershed Association to Assembly Square, because it's the boundary between the saltwater and the freshwater. I'll stop there. I appreciate the latitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wig, for your testimony. I see, kind of scrolling through here, I only see two other hands that are raised. If you want to provide testimony and you do not have your hand raised on the little device here, please do so now. I'm going to call David Dalbaca to provide 2 minutes or thereabouts of testimony.
Hey, hello. Thank you. I'm David Dalbaca, 25 Hancock Street in Somerville. Hope you're hearing me. I'm very pleased with this project. It seems to do a great many things that we wanted to do for many years, and I'm glad that you are setting standards for the rest of Assembly Square that will serve us well in the future. And more specifically, I'd like to follow up on the issue of Kensington Avenue. I'm glad that you are maintaining it as a right-of-way, and I would like to emphasize, along with Wig, that any development either there or across Kensington Avenue must not design out a link from Foley Street through to Mystic Avenue. In other words, don't put any really tall buildings there, no concrete abutments, no huge signs, none of that kind of thing. And this specific project, but also any future projects that may come about in the future, you should keep that in mind. We need to be able to get under the underpass there at some future time, and we should not design that capability out. That's what I had to say, and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Doing a quick scroll, I thought I saw Tori. Yeah, for some reason you went up to the top of the list, Tori, instead of where you were before. So I'm gonna call on Tori Antonino to provide 2 minutes or thereabouts of testimony.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. Tori, I have unmuted you, but the self-muted.
Tori, self-muted?
Correct.
Tori, if you can unmute yourself if you want to provide testimony. Yes, hi.
Can you? Yeah, hi. Hi, thank you. My name is Tori Antonino. I live at 65 Boston Street. I am grateful that this project has evolved to become the project that it is, R&D and commercial. A couple of concerns that I have. Well, a question is, does this project fall under the new zoning? And if yes, all new buildings in the transform areas are required to have a green roof, and it can be a green roof and solar, but that is a requirement. If it is not a requirement, I'm going to dig my heels in and say this is such a win for everybody. We need vegetation to filter the air, to restore habitat, and roofs will provide a great surface to do that. And without our native plants, and that's what I'm suggesting, we lose all of our pollinators, we lose our birds. So, so I want to push for the green roofs, and a project like this, I think would be perfect for it. They're going to say that the mechanicals on the roof may or may not allow us to do that, but there are examples of commercial buildings, R&D, that have successfully had green roofs, and they're able to have the mechanicals in a central place that doesn't interfere with the function of the building or the green roof. Secondly, I'm going to make another pitch for native plants in their design. There's a misunderstanding among landscape architects that somehow native plants don't work, and that there is, we'll plant native plants if it is appropriate. That's not the right answer. I have a native plant for every space that you don't think will work. I can share that list. I would love to, if the landscape architect on the project would be amenable to me just consulting with them, I'd appreciate that. And I can, again, just send some information over. The third thing I wanted to chat about was, because I saw that this development wanted to give back to the community in terms of social justice. And what I see is mostly around job training or having informational sessions, which I appreciate, and having a certain number of jobs for women, jobs for lower income people, training. But I wanted to say we have a need for environmental justice and social justice when it comes to getting our residents out to the fells. And this is a project, if they would be willing to collaborate with other developments in the area, or perhaps take it on their own as a gesture of goodwill, to get a shuttle bus from that location, which would serve East Somerville, up Route 38, pick up at the Mystic Valley Apartments, go to the fells, have it run 3 or 4 times a day, maybe more during after school hours, to get folks who do not have perhaps access to a car, who perhaps do not have that luxury of being able to jet to the fells, and go for walks. So that's something I just want to keep on the radar, because it's really important. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, Tori, very much.
Through the chair, this is Sarah Lewis. I can sort of explain some of the.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
I'm not through with taking public testimony yet. That's not closed.
Sorry.
I'm doing a quick search to make sure that nobody else wants to provide testimony yet, and they don't. So I'm going to give people another 30 seconds or so to provide public testimony, or ask to provide public testimony if you haven't already done so. Okay, going once, going twice. Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing, and I will let Sarah take over.
I apologize. I was just going to address Tori's questions directly. Everything in the city right now is under new zoning. The Assembly Square mixed-use district is a little bit different, because that zoning basically got transferred forward and only reformatted, not re-edited to the new ways of doing things. That was actually a conscious choice, because there's so much development that is still underway from the Federal Realty Group, and we had worked with the landowners at the time to sort of leave that zoning in place while we developed the neighborhood plan update that is at the moment temporarily on hold while we figure out, sort of what our new world order looks like for virtual neighborhood planning. So unfortunately, a lot of the old assembly rules are still in place. Now, all of our conversations so far with the applicant have been as much green roof and as much as it is their intent to do those very things as far as green roofs and things like that. That's part of their general philosophy of operations. So while this is at the master plan stage, I believe we will see a lot more detail on that at the site plan approval stage. The other thing that I sort of would like to point out regarding the native plantings, the civic space will have to be looked at as a separate site plan approval. So it will go through its own review process. And so there will be a lot of work that the team then does with the public space and urban forestry team, and what the community outreach is on that design process will happen as a separate process than the actual building itself. So there'll be plenty of opportunities there to sort of work through design issues and planting pallets at that point. Unfortunately, well, I think the shuttle bus to the Fells, it'd be a really lovely idea. It is not something that we can ask of this project alone. And I think the suggestion of having it be through multiple regional developers, I think because this is sort of a crossover between transportation and open space, it might be something that is, I will follow up with the TMA, the Transportation Management Association, that is over the assembly area in detail, and see if that's something that they are willing to look into or investigate in some way, shape, or form. I think that's sort of the best way to sort of get the broad brush, big interaction that a project like that would take. But it's definitely an idea that I'm going to follow up on.
Thanks, Sarah. I think it's a good idea too, and I'd like to see it move forward in the appropriate method. So I'll speak very briefly before I close this section and wait until we come back in a few weeks with some draft conditions from staff. But like I said on the 7th, and I'm going to re-emphasize it tonight, this has been a fantastic application for master plan based on all the issues that we had with the first iteration of this site. We as a board, public, members of the city council, were all pushing and pushing and pushing to try to get commercial and lab space on this site. We were told it couldn't happen, so we made the best of that situation when we permitted the first version of it. As some of the folks that provided testimony tonight can attest, we really put the last applicant through the ringer in creating a state-of-the-art, almost unheard of double filtration system for having residential next to the highway, which was still a concern, but I think we got it to a place in phase 1 that we didn't expect we would be able to get to. And the fact that this project has been able to move to a commercial site, to a commercial use rather, and has met and exceeded the air quality concerns that were raised by all of us and members of the public during phase 1, I think it's a huge win for this site and for the city. I think this applicant has done a very, very good job in committing to community benefits. Obviously, I don't vote based on the raw dollar figure that's coming into the city, but 14.5 million bucks coming in through community benefits and linkage and permits is certainly helpful, particularly when it's tied to a good project that we've been aspiring to for a number of years. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the draft conditions from staff in a few weeks, and I hope we can move forward with this master plan so that we can get to a more detailed and nuanced view of the application through a site plan approval that will come out in after the stage is done. So does anybody else have anything that they would like to add on this particular application before we move on to our last bit of business? Okay. For any of the attendees who want to log off, you can feel free to do so. We're going to talk about some internal business here, and if you want to watch us, you're more than welcome to. So the last item on our agenda for tonight are elections for the vice chair and for the clerk of the planning board. We still have Sarah and Rebecca on the line, right?
Correct.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I had asked the question, and I think you answered it, because there are 5 of us, but Rob is a he's not a full member. So the question was if we wanted to see if Rob had interest in holding a vice chair seat or a clerk seat, whether that was something that was possible. And it's my understanding that when you asked the solicitor's office, the response was in the negative. Is that right? Sarah?
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So Rob, it's not that we don't like you. It's that upon the advice of our counsel, you not being a full member of the board, despite there only being 5 of us in attendance, not eligible. So sorry if you have interest in either of those positions at this point. So let's move forward with discussion on nominations for vice chair. I'm going to nominate Amelia because I think you, first of all, you're the next most tenured member of this board, and you've always brought a very interesting and nuanced eye to a lot of things that I don't often see. I think you're incredibly bright and forward-thinking, and I would like to see you in this role, to be perfectly honest, if you have an interest in accepting the role if it comes to you.
Thank you. I would be very happy to serve the board as vice chair.
Okay. So I have nominated Amelia. Do we have a second for that nomination?
Second.
And by Sam. So because of the virtual nature of our meeting, we'll do a roll call vote. So on the nomination of Amelia Aboff to the vice chair of the planning board, chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Do I vote?
You can if you want.
Just, you can vote no for fun.
Or abstain.
You can also abstain.
I'll abstain.
Okay. 4 in the affirmative and 1 abstention. We have a vice chair. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sam or Jahan or Amelia, actually, because you can hold both roles if you want. Does anybody have a particular interest in being the clerk of the planning board? And really, that's a heavy lifting job that involves reading the legal notices into the record. So for those of you who are literate, I welcome you to apply. Does anybody have an interest in reading in? Make a nomination if you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like
I'm happy to step up if no one else is jumping at the opportunity.
It's like I was in college, just a little resume fellow. It's like I get to serve as the clerk of the Harvard Crimson. So, in that case, I'm going to nominate Sam to be the clerk of the planning board. Do we have a second? Seconded by Jahan.
Thank you.
So, in the nomination of Sam Denning being the clerk of the Somerville Planning Board, chair votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Sam votes aye. We have a unanimous vote in support of Sam being the clerk of the planning board, so congratulations. And it's my understanding that we have no other business on the agenda. Our next meeting is, I can't exit out of this screen. I think it's in 3 weeks. I think we've got a little bit of time between now and then.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. The next meeting, the next regularly scheduled meeting will be held on June 11th.
Okay, are we also expecting that will be virtual?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is our expectation that virtual meetings at least for the next couple of months, if not longer.
Okay, that's my thought. All right, all. I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Congratulations to our newly titled members.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good long weekend.
Before
Take care.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
We probably need to adjourn.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair.
Usually my favorite part. Cam moves to adjourn, seconded by Jahan. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes
Jahan
aye.
votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Before I vote, did I hear that someone was trying to get a word in edgewise? I thought I heard something, but I'm happy to vote.
Thank you, Rob. This is just Rebecca trying to make sure that we remembered that we had to actually motion and vote to close.
Then I will vote aye on the motion.
Okay, we have a unanimous motion to adjourn. We are now adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Thank
Have a
you.
great weekend.
Thank you all. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.